Creating these classes requires equipment and services that cost money. If you appreciate this education, please think about going to elithecomputerguy.com and offering a one-time or monthly recurring donation. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli, the Computer Guy, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to insert records into tables in your MySQL database, and then how to be able to search through those records using something called the select command. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be inserting into a table that we create. We're going to create a users table. We're going to basically insert a number of user records, and then we're going to be able to search through those user records using something called select. So that's what we're going to be showing you how to do today. So this is pretty cool. We are now to the point where we're getting to the meat and potatoes of MySQL, and you could actually do something useful with what I'm going to be showing you today if you really wanted to. There's not a lot of flash, there's not a great user interface, but theoretically, if you wanted to create a database the way that I've shown you up until this point, create a table for the database and then insert records into that table, you can then be able to search through it using select, and you'd have something that's kind of sort of useful, if maybe slightly ugly. So this is kind of cool. This is to the point where we really start to do things that are pretty interesting. So with that, let's go over to the computer so I can actually show you how to use insert and select. So here we are back at my MacBook Pro. Again, I have VirtualBox running and I'm using Ubuntu Desktop 18.04. So the desktop is the GUI version of the Ubuntu operating system. And so we are going to be using that just again. I think this is a good lab platform for when we start to do additional classes down the road, when we start to use scripting languages such as PHP in order to be able to connect with MySQL. So anyways, with that, let's go down. Click on the Show Applications, then go up here and you type in a terminal. So we're going to need the terminal. And we click into terminal and yay, we have a terminal. We have a nice little command prompt, but this isn't the right command prompt. We need the MySQL command prompt. So what we're going to be using is sudo MySQL. So anybody coming to this series for the first time and going, wait a minute, that's not how you're supposed to get into MySQL, you're kind of sort of correct. We have not gotten into user accounts yet. That will be in a class, maybe next class or the class after that. Right now, we are just building out the internal structure of a MySQL database, and then once that is done, I will show you how to create user accounts and deal with privileges, basically permissions and all that kind of stuff. So right now we use sudo MySQL to log in to this MySQL database. This will log us in as the local host root user so that we get full privileges. If you have a normal database server already up and running that already has user accounts with privileges, this is the point where you would simply type in MySQL space -u space your user account space -p, enter, hit your password, and then you would log in normally. So yes, to be clear, this is a non-standard way of logging in, and that's what you get out of me. Sometimes you get non-standard. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we hit enter, and now we are into the MySQL command prompt. I'm going to hit Control L to clear the screen because I like a nice clear screen when I'm doing these instruction classes. And from here, what I want to do is I want to show databases because again, whenever you come into a MySQL database server, you want to get an idea of what's going on with the environment. So what we have here is these are the databases, and currently we only have the default databases. So I deleted the database and the table that we created before, just so I can recreate them again for this class, just again to kind of cement the idea of being able to create these databases and create tables. This is an important thing for you to be doing as a noob or somebody trying to learn how to do things such as database administration. Basically, typing in commands is a skill set unto itself. So remembering to do things like hit the semicolon, remembering specific syntax, it's one of those things. The more times you do it, the more repetition you have, the better you will become. Just because you book learn and theoretically can pass a test doesn't mean when you're sitting down at a computer and you're going to tippy-tap type out things that you're going to do it properly. So I would highly recommend, especially right now when these projects are so ridiculously easy, you should try to basically every time you come in, delete the database that's already there, start with a new database, start with new tables. Just keep typing this in. Get used to inserting commands, doing the commands that I'm showing you. So in the future, when you actually do have to build something for production environment, you can just tippy tap away, and you're not thinking about a semicolon. You're not thinking about a single quotation mark. You're so used to it already. It's just easy. So anyways, so what we're going to do here is we're going to then create a database, and we're going to recreate that class DB that has been deleted before. And there we go. So create database, whatever the name is, and then semicolon, and that gives us class DB. From this point, what we're going to do is we're going to do use class DB, and so this is going to drop us into the class database to make sure when we're creating tables, we're creating it in the right place. We don't want to be creating it in the information schema or somewhere else. Don't. To be clear, these up here, these are default databases. Don't mess with them. Basically, think of them as the registry for MySQL. Don't mess with them unless you know what the hell you're doing. Now, again, to make sure that you always know what database you're in before you start creating a table, we can use the command select database, open parentheses, close parentheses, and then we do the semicolon, and this will show us what database we are currently in. So we just want to verify, we are actually in the class database before we start creating tables, and so we are. So with this, hit Control L to clear the screen again, and the first thing that we have to do then is create a table, right? So if we go show tables, what we're going to see is there are no tables in this particular database, obviously, because it has just been created. So we are going to create a table for the users. So for this, we're going to create table users. And then we're going to open parentheses. We're going to go down one. We're going to do user ID. So again, we're going to need an ID number for all of these tables. Again, user account 1, part number 2, so on and so forth. This is going to be an int, an integer. We are going to do auto increment. So what this means is every time a new record is created, it will increment up by 1. So the first record is 1, second record is 2, third record is 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we are going to call this the primary key. You always need at least one primary key in any table that you're going to have, and the user ID or the ID is a good place to have it. Then we're going to go down to the next line. We're going to do a name. That will be a text field. Then we do a comma again. Then we go down to the next line. We're going to do age, and we're going to make that an int. So an int is a whole number, 1, 2, 1002. A float is a decimal point, 10.10, 10.20, whatever else. Since this is an age, we're going to use a whole number. We're not going to worry about the kids, all the 5-year-olds out there. I'm 5.5 years old. No, you're not. You're 5. As far as the database is concerned, you're 5. Just deal with it. And then we're going to say gender, and we're going to make this a text. Now for this last one, you do not put a comma because it is the last one. Then you're going to close the parentheses, and then you're going to do the semicolon, and then you're going to look through. And again, this is the reason why it's good to keep typing in these commands over and over and over and again, just to verify you don't fat finger it. Because again, the computer will do exactly what you say. And if you screw anything up, you have to redo it. You don't know how many reshoots I do on these particular classes. Anyways, let's hope this works. Let's hit enter. There we go. Query okay. 0 rows affected. When you get that, that means that actually works. So from this point, what we're going to do is we're going to use this describe command, desc, and then we're going to look at the users table just to verify what fields we have and how they're supposed to be. So we have a field, we have a user ID, we have a name, we have age, and we have gender. User ID is an int, it is the primary key, and for over the extra thing, it is auto increment. So it'll go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we have name, that is text. Again, it is very important to remember with these data types, if you screw up and you make the name an integer or float or something, and then you start trying to insert data, you're going to be very, very, very frustrated. So do verify that these are correct. So name is text, and that's how it should be. Age is an int, and that's how it should be. And again, integer, is a whole number, not a decimal point. So 12 will work, 12.5 will not work. So again, be careful with that, because when we start doing insert commands, if you insert the wrong type of data, you will get errors, and then you'll get frustrated. And then finally, we have gender, and that is text. So okay, so we have created the users table, and all of the data types seem to be appropriate. So now we can actually go and we can start trying to insert data. So it'll do the Control L again. We're back here at the clear screen, and so what we're going to do is we're going to say insert into users table. So the insert command, this is we're going to be putting data into, and then the table, users. Again, this is one thing to really realize with any kind of programming language, any time when you're trying to talk to computers, is once you get used to the language, it becomes easier. When you realize that drop means delete, then it's pretty easy to figure out how to delete a database or how to delete a table. When you realize that create basically equals new for most computer stuff, then you realize how easy it is to create databases and tables. So again, it's all just words here. Once you figure out the words, you'll be good. Okay, so we're going to insert, then we're going to open parentheses. And so the first thing that we're going to say is what columns we want to insert information into. So we're going to insert information into the name column, into the age column, and into the gender column. And again, don't fat finger that. And so what we're saying is insert into users, name column, age column, and gender column. You'll notice there is no user ID column here because that is that auto increment. That is going to automatically happen for us, and I do not want to screw with it. So again, unless you actually know what you're doing, don't mess with your auto increment column, just let it do what it's going to do. So we're just going to be adding the name, age, and gender. Then we're going to say values. So now the values that will be put into name, age, and gender. And here we're going to do a single quotation mark, not a double quotation mark. And so we're going to say Bob, close, single quotation mark, comma, to divide, so that's going to be the name. So the name is Bob. Then we're going to make Bob, let's say 9 years old, close single quotation mark, again, comma again, and then gender, we are going to call Bob a boy, and then we are going to close parentheses, and then we're going to do semicolon. And so we're going to look at all this. So for the users, for the columns, you will notice there is no single quotation mark. So you just put those in there. But then for values, for Bob, for 9, and for boy, there are single quotation marks. Now, actually, for this, if you have a number, so if you have an int, you don't actually have to put a single quotation mark in there. You can simply put that in there as a number. But again, to be kind of simple for you, if you don't use single quotation marks on text, you will fail out. If you do use single quotation marks on numbers, you won't fail out. So again, to try to make this all standard, I will just show you this today. But remember, with numbers, you actually don't have to have those single quotation marks. And so hopefully here everything's right. I'm gonna hit enter, and there we go. Query okay, 1 row affected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to press the up arrow key, so all this pops up again. So I want to add a few records. So then we're going to say, let's say Sue, and then Sue is going to be 15 years old, and Sue is going to be a girl. All right, so this is an easy way to add multiple records pretty quickly. Then I'm going to hit enter. Okay, run 1 row affected. So we're going to go up here. We're going to add a boy. Oh, I don't know, that boy is going to be 17 years old. We're going to name that boy Fred. We're going to hit enter. That's been added. And then finally, we had Sue. Oh, wait, we had 2 boys and 2 girls. So we're going to, 2 boys and 1 girl. So we're going to have a girl. We're going to make her, I don't know, 5 years old. And we're going to make her Pat. So we're going to add her. There we go. So we have now added 4 records to the user's database. So to name, age, and gender, we've added Bob, 9, boy. We've added Sue, 15, girl. Fred, 17, boy. Pat, 5, girl. And so those are now added. So what we can do now is we can actually start selecting, basically being able to read the records that are in this particular table. So with that, I'm going to hit Control L to clear the screen again. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to start selecting. So basically select is the statement. This is how we say we want information out of this particular table, right? So we're going to select, and then what we're going to do is this all. So that asterisk key. So what the asterisk key says is all of them. And so for this field right here, this is what columns of data you want. Do you want the age? Do you want the name? So sometimes you just want names. And so you could do select name. So that would only show you the column for names. Or you can select name and age and gender. And that would only show you those 3. If we do select all, this will show us all columns. Then we're going to do from and the users table. Oops. I don't fat finger it. Again, this is also one thing that's very important with naming conventions. Things like S's. When you create the parts table and the users table and the accounts table, is it accounts with an S at the end, or is it an account table? You want to name everything the same. So if you have a user table and a part table and an invoice table, right? Then it's very easy to go through and be able to do these statements because you know it's the user and the part and the invoice and the account and the vendor. There's no S at the end. Or if you like the S, I'm kind of an S person. I'm an SE type person. I like those plurals. So I would go in and it would be the users table and the parts table and the invoices table and the vendors table. One of the things you do not want when you're creating your naming convention is you don't want a user table and an accounts table and a part table and a vendors table. Because, right, if you mix those final S's, then it can be a real pain when you just want to go in there and do some basic maintenance. And it can also be very difficult when you give this information to coders. So remember, this is the back end, right? This is the back end that your coders, your PHP programmers, your whatever else programmers are going to be interfacing with. So when they're creating their front end, and their front end has to communicate with this database, when you screw out that naming convention, things like S's, uppercases, lowercases, right? Whatever the hell you pick, just pick one way of doing it and sticking with it. So anyways, so what we're going to do is we're going to select all from users. Again, remember the semicolon. We are going to hit enter and woo, look at that. We got a database. We got a table in a database that actually has some records now. So we can see here for the column for user ID, the first user that we added was Bob, and so that is auto-incremented to 1. Then we have Sue. Sue was auto-incremented to 2. Fred was auto-incremented to 3, and Pat was auto-incremented to 4. And so this is a way you can have at least one unique identifier for all the records within this particular table. Past that, then you have Bob, Sue, Fred, and Pat. We have their different ages, and we have their different genders. And so that's really all there is to basically being able to search a little bit through the table. So we see that data. So from now what we can start to do is we can start to do some cool things. So let's say we want to do something like an order by. So we want to be able to select all of this stuff, but we want to do something like order by age. So from there, what we can do is we can do select all from users. And then what we can do is we do the order by, so it's the order by command, and then we're going to say age. So what we want to do is we want to order this by age. Then we're going to hit semicolon. Then we're going to hit enter, and now it's by age, right? So Pat is the youngest. So again, you look at the user ID. So the user ID stays the same, 4, 1, 2, 3. So Pat is the youngest. She is 5 years old. Then it goes to Bob is 9, Sue is 15, and Fred is 17. So that is how you can order by. So again, if you want to order the results, you can also do this descending. So basically, if you do order by age, whatever column. So you can order by any column here. Age is just the easiest because it's got a number. But we could do age, and then we could just say DESC. So this is descending. So it should start with the highest age and then go to the lowest. We do the semicolon and we hit enter, and see now we can see that it starts at 17, 15, 9, 5. So it orders in that direction. You could also do something like name. So if you want something that's alphabetical, so you could do order by name, semicolon here. Then we hit enter, and so we can see Bob, Fred, Pat, and Sue. So it's now alphabetical here. And so using order by, that allows you to order how the results are shown to you. So with that, let's go and do the Control L again. And from here, what I'm going to show you how to do is how to only select particular columns. So what we can do is we can do select. And then let's say we just want the name and we just want the age. So all we want is the name and the age, and then we do from and the users table, right? So that's all the information that we need, and then we can hit enter. And so now you can see we get name and we get age. So we don't get the user ID, we don't get the gender, so on and so forth. If we want to do this, we can also do order by. So again, all of these, you can kind of combine all these little commands together. So you can do order by age if you wanted to. And so now we get this names, ordered by ascending age, 5, 9, 15, 17. Or, of course, you could do order by name, semicolon. And so now it's Bob, Fred, Pat, and Sue, and you now have it ordered that way. So this is one of the things you can do with a column. So again, you can come in your name, if you just want to do gender possibly, so name and gender. From users, order by name, we hit enter. Now we only get the name and the gender. And so this can be very valuable. Right now, right, this has four columns, so it's not a big deal. But imagine, I mean, with tables, you can have a lot of columns. Oh, you can have so many columns, right? You could have 50 columns. I guess you could have 100 columns. I have to go look, see how many, what is the max columns? Anyways, you can have a stupid amount of columns. And so this is where sometimes it can be very valuable for you to simply select what particular columns you actually want the information from. So if you've got 100 columns, obviously 100 columns is not going to be able to fit on the screen. So you can just say, I want the user, the username, and I want something else from there. I don't want everything. So that's basically how you're able to select individual columns. So with that, let's do Control L again. And now I'm going to show you how to use where. So let's say I want some information from this particular table, but I only want it in certain circumstances. So what I can do is I can do select. I'm just going to do all to make this easier, but you could do individual columns here. From users, let's see, where age is, I don't know, greater than 12? Let's do that. So basically what we're saying here is select all. So let's select all the columns from the user's table where the column age is greater than 12. And so we're going to hit enter. And then what we can see here is we only have 2 of these people whose age is greater than 12. So Sue is 15 and Fred is 17. So we got gender girl and we have gender boy. Or one of the things we can do, again, if we want to search on the text, what we could do is we could do select. Again, we're just going to do all from the user's table where gender equals, and this is one of those things, don't fat finger it. You are going to need if you're dealing with text, you're going to need that single quotation mark. And then we're going to say, I just want to know about the boys. I just want to know about the boys. So think of, whatever reason, you just want to know about the boys. And so what I can do is I can hit enter then. And so now it shows me only the boys, right? So this shows me, okay, that's only the boys. Then one of the things that you can do is you can do something like order by. So you could do select, all from users where gender equals, let's say, girl. And then what you can do is order by age. So again, think about this if this was a long list. We only have 5 records here, so this isn't too complicated. But imagine if you had a full class roster. So let's say you had 50 kids in the class, and you want to know what girls do you have in the class and what ages they are. So you could say, select all from users where gender equals girl, order by age. We do semicolon, and there we go. So we can see the user ID is 4, so Pat comes first. So Pat's age is 5, and then Sue's age is 15, and they are both girls. So this is a way you can go through and sort information. And again, remember, you could sort this by any kind of text column that you created. So you could have a text column, again, for, let's say, a sales rep, right? So if you're creating some kind of invoicing software and you want to see what accounts a particular sales rep has, you could do select all from users where sales rep equals Bob. And then you could go through and you could see, who Bob is dealing with, that type of thing. So basically you can do this off of any text. Gender is kind of just an easy thing for you to deal with here. So that's really all there is to this. Again, you use the insert into table command, and then you say the columns, then you say the values, then that allows you to insert data into the table. From there, you do the select, and then what columns you want. Do you want select all? So do you want all the columns? Do you only want some of the columns? Then you say from, the table that you're dealing with, and then you can put in some conditions. So where gender equals girl or where age equals something, you can put that in there, and then you can do an order by. So do you want to order that by an age? Do you want to order that by a name? Do you want to order that, again, group by genders, that type of thing? You can do that kind of stuff. And so that's the basics. And from this point, you can actually start building something that's slightly useful in the real world. So there you go. Now you can start playing around. You can actually start inserting records into your tables and a database, and then you can start doing select statements based off of that. So basically being able to search through, being able to sort and do all of that kind of stuff. So you really, at this point, you actually have something that's slightly functional. Now I know some of you may laugh at that idea. You may say, Eli, who the hell would ever use something like MySQL at the command line? That's idiotic. Remember, I'm 43, so I remember when computers were green screens. I remember Wangs. Do you remember Wangs? I remember Wangs. So I know this may seem laughable to a lot of the young folks out there, but basically what I just showed you is what computers looked like about 30 years ago. No, is this how you're going to be interacting with your MySQL database, or is this how your users are going to be interacting with your MySQL database? Hopefully not, but just to realize it works. You can do it this way. Again, especially when I start teaching you about user accounts and privileges. So privileges are essentially permissions. So if you created user accounts within MySQL with specific privileges to different databases and tables, you could actually have a full-fledged system from this. Again, I wouldn't want to use it. I'm sure as crap know that your users don't want to use it. But theoretically, you could. And so as we go forward, basically all you have to realize is what I just showed you today. How you create an application that your users will actually want to use is, again, you use HTML to create the front end, so to create the submission forms, to create the report structure, all of that, and then you use a programming language such as PHP, and the HTML uses PHP to be able to insert data into the database, and then be able to pull data out of the database. So when I showed you that insert statement, basically when you have an HTML form, what happens is you type out all of your information into that HTML form. You hit submit. When you hit submit, that information that you typed into the HTML form is turned into variables within the backend script, something like PHP, and then that backend script essentially runs one of these SQL statements to insert that data into the database. When you then go to do a report, so again, think about when you go to some software as a service, Salesforce or something like that, and you're looking for a particular record, or you're looking for a particular name, right? You're looking for a user account. So when you go and you type in what user account you're looking for, essentially what happens is that information, that little information is taken, created as a variable, and then what happens is a select statement is then sent using PHP or that backend scripting language that says, select whatever columns from whatever table where the name equals this name, right? That information comes out of the database. The PHP or the scripting language knows how to interpret that, and then that is then printed out in front of you using HTML. And so this is how it works in the real world. But basically, again, the back end of it is just these. Again, all you're doing is inserting data into databases and pulling data out of databases. What makes it all fancy and cool is the CSS and the JavaScript and the other programming languages to make it flashy. But what's going on in the back end is actually shockingly simple. So I will recommend, again, for any new people out there that don't know MySQL, again, we have some MySQL administrators that are watching this track, and I have no idea why. But the people that aren't actually doing this day in, day out, what I would recommend is every time we do one of these classes is delete the database, delete the tables that you've already created, and then recreate the database, recreate the tables, recreate everything, because then you start to get muscle memory. Then you just start knowing what to do. You just put the semicolon, right? Because that's one of the funny things, right? I have these old timers. I don't know why. I have these old timers. They watch these videos. It's frustrating as hell because they leave stupid comments. But anyways, you have these old timers, and they'll complain because I keep talking about the semicolon, right? Why does Eli never shut up about the semicolon? Well, they've been doing this stuff so long that they don't even think about putting a semicolon. Da-da-da-da-da, semicolon, da-da-da-da, semicolon, da-da-da-da, semicolon, right? So they don't even think about it anymore. But the reality is they had to get to that place. They had to do SQL statements 1,000 times before they just instinctually do the semicolon. Again, whether you use single quotation marks or whether you don't use single quotation marks. Essentially, you need to use single quotation marks around text. So name, gender, that type of thing. So whether you do that or not, at a certain point, once you've done the repetition 1,000 times, you don't even think about it anymore, and it seems almost stupid that people bring it up. But realize, if you don't use those single quotation marks properly, your SQL statement's going to fail and you're going to rip out what little hair you have left. And so it's very important with these types of things is don't just, like that's what a lot of people do. What a lot of people do when they're learning programming languages or they're learning SQL or something is they sit there and they watch and then they take some notes and then they say, I know it. I can do it. Don't worry. No, you can't, right? Because yeah, sort of, you've got the notes, you kind of know what you're supposed to do, but it's so easy when you're actually doing this work, again, to forget small little things, put S's where S's shouldn't be, don't put an S where you do need an S, that type of stuff, you can run into a lot of problems. So really, I would highly argue while you're doing the series, and again, anytime you're learning programming, anytime you're learning anything, even though you know something, though you've already learned how to do something, just do it again. Do it again and again and again and again and again. Once you've done it 1,000 times, then you can stop doing it. At least that's what my suggestion would be. Because remember, in the real technology world, it's so much about repetition. It's just being able to sit down, being able to do what you're supposed to do, hit enter or hit submit or whatever, and everything just works. That's why we get paid the real money. A lot of noobs, right? They sit down and they spend 3 hours trying to figure out, why doesn't this work properly? So anyhow, that's just some advice there. As always, I enjoy doing this class and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Apparently, the type of content you just saw is not what Susan W. wants for the future of YouTube. This means that recommendations by YouTube to this channel have dropped massively and views are becoming comically small. I hate to ask. I used to say I would never ask, but if you could subscribe, like, comment, and most importantly, share the videos that you appreciate, that may help slow the death of this channel. Do remember that if anything at all happens to this channel, you can go to EliTheComputerGuy.com to view the content and access information not available on YouTube.